Hi everyone, welcome back. Well, today we're doing a bit of work on our Chamberlain 6G rear end loader. Now we've got a bit of a fuel leak here on the injector pump. So the injector pump is this thing in here, and often they leak fuel from the top of this cover here. Now this cover has the stop shaft on it here and the throttle shaft on it here. There's a couple of little O-rings in there on those shafts that perish over time and they just start leaking fuel. Now when they get bad enough, they get air in the system, and every time you leave the tractor sitting for a day or so, you've got to re-bleed it. And it's a real nuisance, and it makes them, other than wasting a lot of fuel and making a big mess, it starts making them difficult to use as well when you've got to bleed them every single time you want to drive the tractor. But they're not that hard to fix. Now you can get this kit here that has the O-rings and everything in them. See if the camera will actually focus on the part number there. It doesn't really matter, you can go in and ask for a kit for these pumps, and most injector shops have got them. Now this kit does everything you need to reseal the entire pump, and it's a bit of a process if you want to go right through and reseal everything, because your pump's leaking in other places as well. But it's not that hard to do. You've just got to work through the process to get all of these parts in. But today we are just going to take this cover off here and redo these two O-rings, because that's where this particular pump is leaking. So the first thing we want to do is disconnect this shaft here, which goes up to the accelerator, and the split pin's fallen out of that, so that's easy. There's a little spring on here to return the stop lever. This one's got a dodgy stop lever on it, so I think I'm going to have to undo that nut to get that off. And then it's just these two nuts here to lift this cover off. Now once we get to lifting the cover off, there's some springs in there that we will stop and have a look at as I'm taking it apart. Okay, so I've got this cover almost off now, and if I can get the camera in here closely enough, as we lift it up, we can see there's a spring that goes in here from the throttle shaft here down to this governor plate here. Now there's a bundle of different holes, well there's three different holes in the throttle lever up this end, and in this case the spring goes in the middle one. There's also a bundle of different holes in this plate here that it can go through, and in this case it's in the top hole. Now depending on the application and which pump you're using and what the engine's in, this changes the way the governor works. So just take notice of these holes so that you can get the springs back in the same spot when you're reassembling it that you took it apart from. Okay, so we've got this off, we've cleaned it up a little bit. So now we just want to undo these, remembering which way round they go. So there's a short leg and a long leg. The long leg on the stop switch hangs out to the back. Oops. And then there's two little O-rings on the shaft there. Now we've got the O-rings here out of the kit. So it's just a matter of flicking these old O-rings here off and putting the new ones on. So we're just going to get a little screwdriver in here. Usually these O-rings are quite brittle and just break when you try and get them off. I think these are the new ones. We just want to slide the new ones over. Okay, before we slide it back into the housing, we're just going to put a little bit of light oil on there. That just helps the O-rings slide in nicely. They're a much tighter fit than the old ones were, which is good. That should mean that it won't leak anymore. And we want the little knob on the shaft to be as close to the edge as possible. Then we can just put the little cover back on, and the shaft back on. There's a little star washer that needs to go on here, but I need to take this shaft off again to put the stop lever back on, so we'll just assemble that finger tight to start with, and that feels much better than it did before. We're just going to do the same with this one. There's no difference to it, but it does have this little bit that flops around in here that we talked about before. So I'll go ahead and do this one, and then we can reassemble it back onto the tractor. Okay, so when we're reassembling the cover, there's a couple of little tricks that we need to keep in mind. We have a new gasket, and it has these two little tangs on it here, and they generally get in the way. They are actually supposed to locate in here under this plate here, and it holds the gasket in place. If you put it the wrong way round, it will push the sides of the gasket out and you won't get a good seal. So they sit in there like that. The other thing that we need to keep an eye on is this little hooky bit at the back here. Now this is the stop lever. In that direction it's in the run position, and that needs to line up with the little dowel in here when this is in the run position. So we need to make sure that they drop into place. If you don't get these in place, normally the cover will sit up and leak really badly. And then we've got to try and wriggle this spring back into the middle hole on the throttle lever. So I'm going to try and get all of those bits back in the right spot now. Okay, we've got that lined up. We've got the stop lever in the run position. Now we should, and we've got that one in the run position. We should now be able to make sure the gasket's still sitting in the right spot, and drop it down over the two screws here. Something's not quite right because it's not sitting down in that back corner, which means that either that pin is not quite lining up with where it needs to be. It can take a bit of fiddling to get this pin to line up exactly. There we go. That's gone down now and there's no movement at the back corner when I'm moving it. I can feel that working. That one's got spring pressure on it like it should have. Now the kit comes with two new fibre washers to go on here. And then there's these funny looking dome nuts that that go on here. Now we want to do these up reasonably tight, but not over tight, because we can bow this cover if we do them up too tightly. Okay, then it's a matter of reconnecting the throttle, and we've got to take this plate off on this one to get the stop wire back in the right spot. We put the little star washer back on, and we can do this one up tight. Now on this particular pump there are two bleed screws, here and here. This tractor has an electric fuel pump, which makes bleeding it much easier. I normally bleed the top one first because it has a much higher volume of fuel that comes out. Then I'll go back, bleed the bottom one, and come back and bleed the top one again. This one normally doesn't have a lot of air in once you've bled the top one out. And we'll just make sure the top one's running clear again. Yep. Okay, we'll just give it a quick blow down with compressed air to get all the diesel off, but we can already see that there's no fuel coming out round here where it was before. Now I strongly suspect that this one also needs the seal done on the distributor head here, because it seems to be weeping a little bit, but I couldn't actually tell whether it was because there was so much fuel coming from up the top here. But that's 100 times better than it was. Often when you bleed these, you have to bleed them all the way up to the injectors, and they can be a bit of a nuisance the first time you start them. Thanks very much for watching. I hope some of you have found this useful to help reseal your own pumps, and I hope to see you again next time. Thanks. Bye.